You know what's more fun than speedrunning 1 All the Mods star? Speedrunning 18 All the Mods stars. Welcome to the All the Mods 10 Starry B run, where we're gonna have to spend millions of items in order to get 2 All the Mod star blocks, allowing us to get infinite stars with the Starry B. If you enjoy the video, feel free to drop a like below and subscribe to the channel for more content in the future. Now let's get right into it. Alright guys, welcome back to All the Mods 10 to the Sky. This run's gonna be just a little bit different. This time we'll need 18 stars to make the Starry B, which means we're gonna need to scale up our resource generation quite a bit. The beginning of this run is gonna be pretty similar to my previous video, which you can click this little pop-up above, or click the link in the description to check that one out. So while past me is going through some of the basic startup stuff, there's a few things I want to go over with my last video, as well as speedrunning modded Minecraft in general. First up, there was a lot of comments on how my tier 1 generators were creating a stack of items. And that's because I'm playing on an older version, which I'm also playing the same version on this video. And the only reason that I'm playing on an older version here is because I recorded this video before I even posted the last one. It just goes to show how long editing can take. And if you think playing on a different version is somehow cheating, may I introduce you to basic vanilla Minecraft speedrunning? You know, the speedrunners that play on 1.16.1, simply because it's hard to get ender pearls on newer versions? And funnily enough, that argument doesn't even matter, because the newest versions of All the Mods 10 to the Sky are actually easier to speedrun. But you'll see that in my next video. I do put it in the description, but for those wondering, we're on 1.1.2, with it going up to 1.5.1 currently. There's also some people complaining that I use an auto clicker, so let's go ahead and check the rules on that. Modded Minecraft speedrunning rules. No results? Who could have possibly seen that coming? But all jokes aside, we are not playing cookie clicker here, and an auto clicker is basically just quality of life at this point. I just use the one that's built into my mouse, but if you guys don't have that, you can actually just bind your right click key to any button, and then just hold down the button for basically the same results. And then one last thing, I've finally set up my Discord channel. Check the description below for the invite link. And as an added bonus, any YouTube, Patreon, or Discord members will gain exclusive access to all my speedrunning guides, plus a priority help channel where I'll help you out with your modded Minecraft questions. Obviously, I'll help everyone out, but if I get too busy, I'll be checking that first. And if you want a free subscription, every future video, including this one, will have a clearly marked hidden phrase, and the first person to comment it will get a free subscription. And with that all out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about this speedrun. For the most part, we'll be doing just about the same stuff to make 1 star, except we're gonna have to scale up pretty heavily. There are 2 main things that we're really gonna need to scale up. First up is antimatter, where in the single star run, we could just store up a little bit of energy and dump it into our SPS machine to make 2 antimatter. Here, we're gonna need to make 36 antimatter, meaning we're gonna need to scale up our power generation like crazy. But don't you worry your sweet little cheeks. I've got a plan for that. The next big thing we have to worry about is producing enough iron and gold. In order for us to make 18 All the Mod stars, we need almost 11 million iron and gold ingots. So you know, just a few. It's actually surprisingly very doable. We'll just have to change up our Geore setup, which we'll be getting to in a little bit. I definitely end up making quite a few mistakes in this run, which just means we'll have to revisit this in the future. So, what's this guy doing? Oh yeah, we're sieving for resources. Which also reminds me that apparently you're supposed to pronounce it sieve, and I just refuse to believe that. So you're telling me I get to pronounce this as siege, but if I replace the G, all of a sudden it's sieve. Now, I'm willing to compromise, of course. So, sorry Rainbow Six players. If I can't have my way, neither can you. Now getting back to the speedrun, we're going to want to make some barrels so that way we can start making some clay. So let's go ahead and toss those by the water. We can also go ahead and upgrade our meshes. You may notice I have a bunch of extra meshes in my inventory, and that's because we're going to eventually upgrade to a 5x5 sieve. Ugh, it feels so wrong. But continuing on, let's start smelting some of those ores we're getting. And while those are smelting, let's set up a little area for our block generators. And back at our furnaces, let's smelt some compressed sand, so that way we can get some compressed glass. And now that we have some iron, let's go ahead and make a bucket, so that way we can start getting our clay. We'll use compressed sand here, but in later versions you can do the same thing, but you just need to use compressed dust. And with that clay, we can now go ahead and make a crucible. We'll just have to toss that into one of our furnaces before we can get using it. While that's smelting, let's go through some dirt to get some sugarcane and mycelium seeds, which we'll place below some of our barrels to get some witch water going. Our chest is going to start getting pretty cramped here, so let's add a stack upgrade for a little bit more space. Now we're going to go over to our quest tab, where we're going to get some steel from one of our quests, and use that to make a superheated element. This will make lava at 60 times the rate in our crucible, so we'll have plenty in no time. I see a creeper off in the distance, which reminds me we should definitely claim our chunks, that way nothing ends up getting blown up. Back at our crucible, we've already made a bucket of lava, so let's go ahead and use that to start making our generators. We still have to have a little bit of a complicated setup, because in this version we're forced to use an extractor to make netherrack. But let's get our witch water going, that way we can start making endstone as soon as we get our next generator. But for now, we'll just have our cobblestone generating. Some locals decided to stop by, so let's just make sure to give them a nice warm welcome. We don't really need bones right now, but we do need a little bit of rotten flesh, which our friend here is more than willing to help out with. Now let's go ahead and make a crafting upgrade for our chest, making crafting much easier. Now we're going to go ahead and use that rotten flesh to make some primal goo. We can just place that down anywhere, and we'll need to feed it some sugar to fuel it. Now we can place some iron blocks next to it, and it'll slowly convert that into ferric ore. We're also going to need to place a glowstone block underneath our endstone generator. And after crafting up another generator block, we can just replace our cobblestone with that to start making some endstone. Let's also replace this dirt path, that way I don't keep running into the witch water. But now that we have plenty of endstone, let's go ahead and hammer that down, and then we'll sift it for some ender pearls. We're now going to need one last generator, which we're going to use to start generating some obsidian. We'll just have to make sure there's an obsidian block below, and that we have lava flowing into it. We're now going to use that obsidian to make an item collector, which we'll toss onto our chest to start collecting all the items getting dropped. Now that we're going to start getting a lot of items, we're going to want to get into some bulk smelting. So let's head into the create mod and craft up a couple of its items. Now to set up our bulk smelting, let's go ahead and power our fan with a water wheel, and we're going to place down a chute with a chest. That way all our items cook at the same rate. Now the last step is to add some lava. Just be careful where you're standing. We've got plenty of iron going now, so let's go ahead and upgrade our chests. That way we can hold more items. Our ferric ore is done growing, so let's go ahead and add that to our smelter. And since it only gave us 3, we're going to need to convert one more block. And now for the tedious grind of upgrading our meshes. That ferric ore is done now, which means once we smelt that, we'll have everything we need to make an auto clicker. We'll add this bad boy to our sieves, that way it can start automatically going through them. And let me tell you, placing this thing correctly is quite annoying. But now that it's all set up correctly, let's go ahead and add a chest next to it, which will pipe in whatever we want to sift through. For now, let's start with some gravel. And as that's going, let's slowly upgrade our meshes to diamond. And with plenty of diamonds coming in, let's go ahead and make a mega torch. That way we can stop all these annoying spawns. We can also go ahead and make a set of diamond tools. And don't forget our handy dandy time in a bottle. We can make some compression upgrades, and add those to a couple chests, to make converting between compression levels much easier. It'll also give us a ton of storage. And now we'll need to make an extractor, that way we can start generating some netherrack. We'll just go ahead and place that on top of our gravel, as well as replace some lava that I stole from earlier. We're going to need a lot of obsidian by the end of this, so let's also add a compression upgrade to this one. If you're playing on the later versions, there's a much easier way to mass produce obsidian in the late game when you need it. But you'll see that trick in the next video. In the meantime, let's add an upgrade to our pipe, that way we can start making sure it doesn't pull out our compressed items. We've also completed plenty of quests, and completely fill up our inventory with a bunch of junk. Now it's time to add a little new trick. But to do this, we're going to need to convert a little more iron to make a second clicker. This one we're going to actually just face directly into the grass, as well as make sure it's in range of our item collector. Now we'll just have this continually clicking the grass, as well as turning on the sneak click. And what this is going to do is start filling up our chests with all the pebbles we get by clicking the grass ourselves. But this does mean our chest is going to start filling up pretty quick, so let's go ahead and make another stack upgrade for it. And convert it one more time into the gold tier. Our last step is to make a compacting upgrade, which we'll use to convert all our ores and pebbles into their compressed form. Just be sure to add everything to the filter. And now, unlike the last video, we have a consistent supply of deep slate, which we're going to need to hammer down into its crushed form, giving us access to platinum and uranium. And with that set up, let's now go ahead and start expanding our island. And almost forgot, we're going to need to start going through some netherrack as well. That way we can start getting some quartz. Now that we have most of the basics done, let's go ahead and make some inscribers to start getting into AE2. We're also going to want an infuser, as we're going to start up mechanism as well. And a simple iron generator for power will do for now. We'll just go ahead and fuel that with some coal. Now we're going to want to make some energy cables to connect all our machines up. With those cables in place, we're now going to set up our inscribers. And before we can use this little setup, we're going to need to make some inscriber plates. The inscribers on the top are going to take all our plates, then we'll extract those outputs into an inscriber below. Now all we have to do is feed this chest all the items we want to inscribe, and if you place enough resources in them, we'll slowly trickle down to the chest below. And the first thing we're going to want to craft up is some acceleration cards. That way we can speed up our machines. And while we let those go for a little bit, let's move back over into mechanism. Let's add some wind generators to our system, that way we can better keep up with our inscribers. Now we've got tons of resources coming in, so let's prioritize smelting some iron and coal, that way we can start making our first reactor. Let's swing back over to our processors, where we're going to want to create a few controllers. As well as add a couple more sieves, since we now have plenty of stuff to start going through. Now back to setting up our ME system, we're going to need a couple more things to get it running. We've already got the controllers, so let's also get a crafting terminal, as well as a storage controller from Sophisticated Storage. This one's just going to connect to all our general storage chests, and then we just need to add a storage bus to connect it to our ME system. Now we're going to add that crafting terminal, as well as our ME controllers. Last but not least, we're going to need to power these, so let's get started into Flux Networks by making some flux dust. And then psych, we're just going to connect it with cables. We're not going to want one more storage controller, something I should have done in my previous run. We're going to connect this one up to our ME system as well, but this one's going to be set to extract only. And finally, we'll want to make a storage tool, which we'll use to choose which chest we want to connect to this controller. By setting it up this way, we allow our system to be able to extract anything from these chests, but we've made it so I can't put anything into them, meaning they won't fill up with junk. Then if we ever want to expand our storage, we'll just stack on whatever chests we need. Just make sure they're all connected, and that they're all sophisticated storage chests. Now we'll head over to our market block and start buying some animals. For now we only need some chickens and cows. We'll place some chickens near our item collector, that way we can start getting some eggs. Now it's time to make our foundry. We'll just need a bunch of clay bricks, which we'll get from smelting this fire clay, which we'll then use to craft all the necessary components. We'll set up a 3x3 smelter, and build it up quite tall, as we're going to need to smelt down a lot of items. Let's now move our crucible over here, where we're going to set up some auto lava generation, which we're going to pipe directly into our tank. For now, we'll just manually fill up this chest with some cobblestone. Now after taking a quick look at our ores, we can see we have plenty of uranium. Let's add that to our smeltery, that way we can start making our geores. don't need too much uranium to make our reactor, so for now we'll just grow it with some basic growth accelerators. And from one of our quests earlier, we got a Fortune 2 book, so let's set up an anvil and add that to a pickaxe, making our geore harvesting much faster. Now we just want to craft up our basic reactor. And with that bad boy set up, let's just add a flex plug, that way we can start wirelessly transferring its power. And then we'll toss in whatever uranium we have left. And for now it makes plenty of power so we can fill it up later. The next big thing on our list is going to be AE2 Autocrafting. So let's make some assemblers for basic crafting, as well as a pattern encoding terminal, that way we can start teaching recipes. We're eventually going to need to use a lot of channels, so let's just add a couple more controllers to our system. Then we'll just place any machine we want to autocraft with next to a pattern provider. Some of these patterns are going to need some water, so let's also connect up a sink to our system. Now we're going to be having quite a few machines per pattern provider, so we'll just make sure that they're all spread out. And the last thing we need to do for autocrafting is to set up some crafting blocks. But basic AE2 crafting can be a little limited, so let's go ahead and grow some entro seeds, allowing us to upgrade some of our AE2 machines. We're also going to need to add even more storage, as our stuff's starting to overflow again. What a mess. Let's just make that item collector collect those real quick. And now we're all set. Let's grab up some of those intro crystals, which we only need 32 of to start duplicating. Now we have everything we need to make a crystal assembler, allowing us to make some extended AE2 crafts. We'll just add that to one of our pattern providers, and then connect some power to it. Now we're going to want some ancient debris, so let's go ahead and start sifting through some crushed up blackstone. With that going, we'll add a couple molecular assemblers to our auto crafting setup, allowing us to do some basic crafting patterns. Now we'll teach our system how to make a circuit slicer, which will allow us to start mass producing some processors. So with that done, let's add it to our pattern provider, and we'll make sure it's auto exporting back into our system. Now we can finally start making some extended pattern providers, which holds 4 times as many patterns as the basic one. And with how many basic crafting recipes we're going to have, these will be really helpful on saving space. We're now running pretty low on logs, and these R saplings are perfect for getting some. We'll just add a little area to grow them in, that way we can get tons of logs per sapling. And now with that out of the way, we're going to go ahead and set up a quarry. This will just be sort of temporary, as there's a more efficient way to mine these geores that we'll get to later. For now, let's just clear out this little area for our geore setup. Let's just add a couple more patterns to our pattern providers, that way we can start auto-crafting all of the tiers of the growth accelerators. This is definitely an area of the run that I could have been a lot faster with, especially since I forgot to put the cables underneath the growth accelerators. Since the higher tier growth accelerators can't be next to each other, we'll have to make this little pattern and start copying it around. And here you can see where the cabling is not quite ideal. Yeah. Anyways, we're gonna need some blaze rods soon, so let's go ahead and make a rod cast, which we'll use to turn our blaze powder into blaze rods. We're just about done with our bulk smelting, so let's replace it with a soul campfire that we get from a quest, allowing us to bulk craft sand into soul sand. We now have everything we need to make our automotium furnace, so let's go ahead and craft that up. We'll then add that to one of our extended pattern providers, allowing us to make all the furnace recipes. Let's just make sure it has the factory augment, upgrading it to 6 smelting slots, and allowing it to use power. Now it's time to start making everything wireless. So let's add a wireless access point to our system, which will allow us to use some wireless terminals. Let's make a wireless terminal for both pattern encoding and crafting. And we'll combine them together into one terminal, and make sure it's linked to our system. And while we're at it, let's also set up wireless charging for our flex system. Now we can both craft items and patterns on the go. We're going to need to add a filter module to our builder, that way it only mines our fully grown clusters. Heading back over to our sink, we're going to want to start pulling some water out into a matter condenser. This will start automatically crafting some matter balls. So let's store those into a chest. Then we'll head into our system and teach it to turn those into singularities. With singularities now available, we can craft up a wireless connection kit. And now that we have some geores coming in, we're going to want to start smelting them inside of our furnace. So let's just connect an extended interface into it, and tell it to smelt whatever items we put in it. Heading back over into Mechanism, we're going to want to make an advanced pattern provider. This is like a normal pattern provider, except this one will allow us to tell us which face of the machine we want items to be put into. This will be perfect for our Mechanism infusers, as they need 2 different items going into 2 different faces. So let's go ahead and set our infuser to take infused items into our middle slot, and the rest of the items will be pushed and pulled from the pattern provider. Now for our patterns, we just gotta set them up a little different. Each pattern is gonna have a specific ratio of an enriched item to a regular item. For example, this pattern is able to make 8 alloys with 1 enriched redstone, whereas this one can only make 4 with an enriched diamond, and then down to 2 for enriched obsidian. Then we'll need to use an advanced pattern encoder to tell it which faces to put the enriched items in. For ours, we set it on the north face of the machine, but if you try this and have issues, just double check which way your machine is facing. Now we can go ahead and make installers for every tier of mechanism machines. Heading back over to our little quarry, let's add a couple of coal geores, as we're going to want to make a bigger reactor soon. And look at these beautiful cables. And if I look a little confused here, it might be because I'm a little confused. This is far from the normal setup that I have, so I'm just kind of trying to deal with the hole I dug myself. But for now it works good enough, and that's all that matters for now. Let's just go ahead and take some of our geore shards, and make sure that our furnace is cooking them all up. Now we're going to want to make a jetpack, and I don't have any leather right now, so let's use this atomic reconstructor to make some. Probably would have been faster to kill some cows, but since we need this atomic reconstructor anyways, we might as well use it. And after a little bit of crafting, we now have an emerald jetpack. A lot of people comment that I should use flight potions and a pylon, but getting phantom membranes can be pretty unreliable, and we need the emerald jetpack in the end as it's much faster than normal flying. Anyways, let's use our cow that we had from earlier, and convert a bunch of milk into slime. We'll then use all those slime boats to start making some conveyor belts. Let's just teach our system how to make all that, in case we end up needing more later. I've also noticed that all my basic storage chests are full, so let's give those a couple more stack upgrades. Now let's fly away from our island a little bit, and we'll use an angel block to start building our mob grinder. Once we have all the conveyor belts facing the direction we want, we can just simply extend it with our building wand. We'll just need to place a normal solid block where our mob masher is going to go. That way we can power it underneath with a lever. We also want to add some upgrades to it, so let's add some sharpness, fortune, and beheading upgrades. We're now officially seeing our first phantoms, so let's sleep the night away because I hate their guts. The Mega Torch might work on them, but I'd probably have to place one super high up since they spawn in the air. Anyways, we're heading back over to our mob grinder where we're going to set up our auto collection, and we can see we're already starting to get a couple random mobs in there, but we want to add some stack upgrades as this will fill up pretty quick. For now, we'll just spawn some mobs with the mob gateway, and we'll connect this chest up to our storage network. Just make sure it's set to extract only, that way we don't accidentally fill up this chest with random junk. Then last but not least, let's make sure it's climbed and chunk loaded, that way random mobs don't start blowing it up. Now that we're starting to make a little bit of Inferium essence, we can go ahead and start making our farm. I'm also pretty slow setting this up, as it's kind of hard to visualize where all these accelerators should go, because if you put them too close to each other, they're gonna break. But after a little bit of tinkering, we got it done. So let's just go ahead and connect that up to our system. In this farm, we're going to grow quite a few crops. But before we plant all our crops, let's actually make sure that we fertilize all the dirt. This will make sure our crops grow much faster. Then we'll just need to power all our growth accelerators. You can optionally use some wireless charging items, but I like the cables as it's perfect for some crops, like the industrial hemp seeds, preventing them from growing 2 blocks tall. In order to make the rest of the seeds we want to grow, we're going to need to set up an infusion altar. Now we'll just need to place in whatever recipes we need. First up, let's make some dirt seeds. Then we can use any logs to make some wood seeds. We're going to place both those seeds on some inferior farmland, that way it has a chance to duplicate our seeds. This chest is also going to fill up pretty quick, so as per usual, let's add some stack upgrades. That'll do for now for some seeds, so let's actually go ahead and start making some more geores. We can hook up a storage bus to our foundry drain, giving our ME system access to all the smelted items. Now since we're going to need tons of geores, let's make this fun little setup. We'll have an interface that's connected to our storage network, which we can use to fill up these basins with whatever molten metals we want. We're also going to have it pulling out compressed sand, allowing us to quickly mass produce some geores. This basin confused me for a little bit, until I realized that it couldn't accept sand because it's already got an item in it. Now we just gotta tell our interface which molten metal we want to put in. Then finally we'll add some pipes to extract them out. Heading back over to all of our machines, we're going to want to start expanding these, that way we can make items 4 times as fast. Since we're making 18 stars, this is going to be especially helpful. Now let's go ahead and request some items to make sure they're all working. Luckily, Applied Energistics 2 is pretty smart, and we'll try to evenly divide all the work between all of the machines. Now it's time to build our actual Geore setup. This time I remembered that I gotta put my cables on the floor first, and we'll use the copy and paste gadget to start mass placing them. I'd normally use a building wand, but it doesn't work on these cables. Now we gotta place all our growth accelerators, which I definitely didn't do in the most efficient way, and you'll live and you learn. But before we finish setting up that farm, we're going to need a lot more power generation, so let's go ahead and set up a big reinforced reactor. This one we're going to make pretty big, as we're going to need a lot of power generation. It won't be enough power generation for our antimatter, but it should be able to cover everything else. And after nearly dying to fall damage, let's go ahead and make some mechanism free runners. That way that doesn't end up happening. At this point, I'm starting to run out of reactor pieces, so let's go ahead and check out our machines and see what's slowing down. Looks like we're starting to run out of power, so it's a good thing we're starting to make our reactor. Oh hey there! And would you look at that? This guy's useless. Since the basic reactor doesn't take any steel, let's just make a second one of these to hopefully fix our power. Now we should be good to speed up our machines a little. That way we can get our bigger reactor going. While we're waiting on the last few pieces, let's set up an interface to automatically fill this up with uranium. And now this is complete, we can finally turn it on and start making tons of power. This one's going to produce about 1.5 million FE a tick. Now we're going to want to create some power storage. And whereas in the single star run we want to use this for antimatter, this one we'll just use as a buffer in case we start using a little more power than we make. We'll just pump power into this at a negative priority, storing any excess power we're making. And look who decided to show up. These things are the most annoying. If I didn't make it through the night there, I would have been very pissed. But back over to our Geore setup, we're going to go ahead and set up a few more builders. Now I know I said that this wasn't going to be our final setup, but the builder should be fast enough for most of the resources. We'll just need something else for stuff like iron and gold that we'll need millions of. Now we're going to need a few more builder cards, and since I'm out of sugarcane, let's go ahead and make some nature seeds. Now we have everything we need to make our quarry cards. We'll just add those to our builders, and select the area we want them to mine in. Now we just need some storage on top of them, which we will eventually combine all into one chest. So let's go ahead and do that now. This will just save us a bunch of stack upgrades for the future. Now let's go back to our old Geore setup and start breaking that down. And we'll add whatever geores we got there into our new system. Now what we have to do is craft up any remaining geores we need. And slowly add them into our setup. Unfortunately, I had quite a few issues with the setup, although I've designed a new one that's much better, that I'll end up using in my next Starry B run. Heading back to our mob grinder, we're going to need to equip a few different items. That way we can unlock the next difficulty for Apotheosis. This will allow us to get rare gems, which we're going to need to make a smithing template. For now, let's get some regular gems, and let's turn those into gem dust. Now we can make a salvaging table, which will automatically salvage all the items that we get in this chest. And once we get those rare crystals, we can finally make our smithing template. And we can use one of those smithing templates to make an allthemodium template, which we'll duplicate a few times as we'll need a couple of them. Now we'll want to make an allthemodium sword and pickaxe. We're also going to use those smithing templates to upgrade our meshes into netherite. And we're going to need lots of allthemodium. So we're going to upgrade our sieves to be a 5x5. Now it's time to head into the nether to look for some wither skulls. Luckily we spawned in a soul sand valley which is able to spawn wither skeletons. So all we gotta do is just make a nice little platform. Then we'll just want to swap one of those bad boys, and then kill a couple of them until we get enough for a wither skull. We're also going to hope for a ghast to spawn, which we're going to go ahead and swab as well. Now that we have a wither skull, we're going to go ahead and make a gateway. This is a nether gateway, which is going to spawn more wither skeletons for us. On top of that, it's also going to give us a monster spawner. So let's take that and set it up in our mob grinder. Then we'll add various items to it to give it different attributes, such as wool for making it quiet, chorus fruit for no AI, and sugar and clocks for faster spawning. Finally, we'll want to add some echo shards, making mobs drop tons more items. Now all we need for the spawner is to give it a spawn egg. So let's get some liquid XP going, and use that to make some spawn eggs. The first spawn egg we're going to put in is a wither skeleton. We're going to need quite a few skulls later in the game, but we're also going to need a few now. That way we can kill some withers. In order for us to kill some withers, we're going to want to make a kill chamber first. So let's just build a little box out of tinted glass, as withers cannot break through that. Now we're going to want to spawn in 6 withers, which will be enough to train some hostile neural network models. We just got to make sure that we're tagging all the withers first, and then we'll add those models into a deep learner. Now we just need to kill all 6 of them to successfully train our models. We'll set up hostile neural networks in just a minute, but for now we're going to get some fortune books. Here I'm using the Ender IO Enchanter, which unfortunately takes directly your levels, but isn't too big of a deal as we get plenty of XP from our furnace. Then we're going to use those fortune books on some annihilation planes, which is going to be a much more efficient way of mining our geores. We're just going to place the annihilation planes on each geore, but we're going to have to make a subsystem to connect these two. Since we can only do 8 channels per cable, we're going to need to dye some cables. That way they don't all connect to each other. Otherwise, too many channels would flow through them, and it would mess up our system. Now to create our second system, we'll just have an ME controller, and have our cables connect into it. We're just going to use a dense cable for now, but the controller could have just been where the dense cable is. Now we'll need to connect a chest up to the system, which will start filling up with items from the annihilation plane. We see that we're starting to get a few pebbles, so let's just add a filter to make sure it doesn't grab those. Then we'll set up a second bus on this chest, and connect it to our main system. Now let's add an Omega stack upgrade, which will allow for near infinite storage of each item. And as you can see, we are generating iron quite quick. We'll then want to repeat the same process with gold ore. With that out of the way, we're now going to set up some vibranium crafting. So let's set up a pattern terminal into an elite crafting table, as well as one into an ender crafter, which the ender crafter needs to be powered up with these ender alternators. Now before we get all that going, let's set up our simulation chambers, that way we can start making some nether stars. We'll just need some pipes going in and out of each of these machines. Luckily you don't have to worry about items going in the wrong spots, as these machines can only accept certain items. Let's now take all those wither models we've been training, and add them into our simulation chambers. All of these simulators are automatically being fed prediction matrices, which are being auto-crafted by our system. Back over to the Geore setup, I've made a temporary little fix, where we'll only send in the liquids when the lever is powered. Now we can finally craft up all the geores that we're missing. And for each one, I'll just manually put in whatever we need to smelt. And once those are all finished, we'll add them to our giant farm. Back to our simulators, I'm starting to wonder why they're not working, and I realized I forgot to power them all. So let's go ahead and connect all these cables up. Now we can use the Ender Crafter to make one more geore. We don't really need any uranite. We'll just need this geore for crafting vibranium. Now the final step is to make some crystalline ingots, which we'll use to upgrade all our crafters into auto crafters, meaning I don't have to manually craft them anymore. We'll just need to add the recipe to the crafter, as well as add some power. Let's also craft up another couple mega torches, as we've expanded a little bit further than our current one reaches. Now we just have to repeat the process with the Ender Crafter, and we can start automatically making some vibranium. Now let's use that vibranium to make a smithing template, which we're going to use to upgrade our pickaxe into vibranium. Now let's go ahead and make a few more annihilation plane upgrades, which we'll add to our gold geores. And as you can see, we're making geores quite quickly. And keep note that most of these geores are actually being pulled out into the furnace. This does mean that our furnace isn't keeping up, so let's go ahead and upgrade that. Next up on our list is going to be a fission reactor. We're going to need to start producing quite a bit of fissile fuel, and then turning it into nuclear waste. We should probably make the fissile fuel setup first, but like I said, I made plenty of mistakes during this run. So enjoy this fission reactor creation with this new awesome music that I found. Now it's time to start making our fissile fuel. I've made this so many times at this point that I'm actually starting to memorize it, which might be a little sad. But for those of you that need help with making the fissile fuel, I'll probably put out a quick little short on it soon, or you can check out my speedrunning notes by becoming a supporter of the channel. The overall gist of it is that we're going to need to melt down basically 3 different items, combine it with a bunch of different water products, as well as its own products, and then you eventually get fissile fuel. I decided to power on the machines on the bottom, as most of the sides are being used for inputs and outputs. Although you may notice that I'm actually adding one more layer of machines, and these machines are going to convert some coal into sulfur, since we don't produce quite enough sulfur on our own. Once all the pipes are in place, all we have to do is make sure all of our machines are configured correctly. We can even use a configuration card to automatically copy and paste configurations. One important thing to do here is to make sure that our recipe is set to many times the normal amount, that way our auto-crafting can craft it fast enough. We'll then just put whatever items we need inside an interface, as well as give it a crafting card so that way it'll automatically craft them for us. I do need to move these isotopic centrifuges, that way I have enough room to pull out their outputs. Now the last step is to add upgrades to all of our machines. Just make sure that the dissolution chambers are using gas upgrades, otherwise it's going to be extremely slow. Now this entire setup uses a lot of power, so you can actually be more power efficient by taking out some speed upgrades, and if they aren't running fast enough you can add some more machines at lower tiers, making them more energy efficient. Here I just had a little bit of power issue because it wasn't pulling from my stored power network. And before we can turn on our reactor, we're going to need to add some water to it. The only thing I've been able to find in this mod pack that's able to produce enough water for the reactor is by using integrated dynamics. I tested a lot of other mods, and the closest I got was using Super Factory Manager, which can move infinite amounts of liquids, but it can only do so every 20 ticks, which is not fast enough to keep up with the reactor. And we definitely don't want our reactor exploding. So let's go ahead and put this mineral that we got from these trees into our little basin setup. Now we have plenty enough crystallized mineral to make a fluid interface and fluid importer. Now we just need to connect our interface up to the reactor and our importer up to the sink. Then we just give our importer a card and tell it to transfer a ton of liquid every tick. Now we can safely turn on our reactor without worrying about running out of water. Don't worry about the steam that it creates, we can just leave that at max. Now we'll just need to pull out any nuclear waste that we're making. And these tubes can hold about 1 million each, so we'll just place down a bunch of tubes as storage. With this nuclear waste, we're going to need to convert it in an isotopic centrifuge for plutonium, and inside a solar machine for polonium. We'll need to make some pellets of each of these, and we'll store any spent nuclear waste in tubes below. Now into something that I didn't do in the previous run, we're going to set up a bunch of electric pumps, and by adding some filter upgrades to them, we'll start generating some heavy water. We'll then separate the heavy water into deuterium, which is going to be half of what we need for some D2 fuel. Getting distracted for a moment, I realized that we need some witches for our spawner, so let's go ahead and summon some of those in, and change our spawner into witches. This will start generating massive amounts of redstone for us. In our loot chest we also have a backpack and feeding upgrade, so let's just equip those, that way I don't have to eat anymore. Now back to making DT fuel. Let's go ahead and set up some thermal evaporation plants. Since we can't use our building stick for this, let's just use the copy paste gadget. Now we'll have one thermal evaporation plant taking water, which will slowly convert it into brine. And then we'll pipe that brine over to a second plant, which is going to convert it into lithium. Now we'll add some resistive heaters. That way these thermal evaporation plants will run at full speed. We'll just need to make sure to set the heaters to use enough power. Now we should be making some lithium, which will convert from liquid into gas. Some of our lithium is going to be used to make some lithium dust, which we'll just pipe into our network, as we'll need tons of that later. The rest of the lithium we're going to pump out into some solar machines, which will be the other part we need to make DT fuel. All we need to do is combine both of those inside an infuser. Back at our Fissile fuel farm, we're going to make a little setup that makes HDPE pellets, which we'll pump back into our system, in what I can only describe as spaghetti cabling. Now back to our infuser, let's double check that this is making some DT fuel, and that it's getting inputs from the correct sides. Now what we're going to do is make a fusion reactor. This reactor can make up to 80 million RF a tick, which will be plenty enough for all our antimatter. It's surprisingly very cheap to make, and its only fuel is technically water. The only reason I don't make it in most of my runs is that usually I don't need this much power, and it would just be a waste of time. But in this scenario, we definitely need the power output. Although you'll see that I messed this thing up so many different times, but luckily it's so powerful that you only need it running for a little bit. We'll just make sure that we have inputs and outputs, and we'll also need a focus matrix. In order to get this thing started up, you'll want to store up about 400 million RF inside a laser amplifier, and then shoot it into the reactor. Now let's make sure that this thing's getting fuel, because if it ever runs out of fuel, then you'll have to reignite it using the same laser trick. But before you shoot your laser into it, make sure that it has a hollow rum that has some DT fuel in it. The item should say ready for reaction. Now we just need to shoot our load into it. Our load of power, that is. And once it's running, it's going to start generating us tons of power. Just note that the solar machines need it to be daytime to be running, so you need to make sure they are making over 2 times the amount of fuel. That way it covers nighttime, or you need to find a way to automatically turn off the night. And guess what? I didn't do either. So yeah, the machine ends up failing quite a bit. But we can make our SPS machine now, which is going to allow us to convert our polonium into antimatter. Let's just do the same cable trick to make sure we have enough polonium storage, and connect that into our SPS machine. At this point I'm a little confused why I'm not getting power from this thing, but eventually I realized that this port was not set to output. You also may notice that the fusion reactor is already off anyways, and that's because I'm not making anywhere near enough fuel. But when I go and check what's wrong, it turns out that my machines are just not taking any power, and this is because of some issue that I have with my flux networks. But for now, let's set up another reaction. That way we can get our power going. And as you can see, we are making a lot of power. And most of this power is just going to be directly put into the SPS machine. And at this point I start to realize that my fluid pipes are not quite good enough, so let's actually use some mechanism fluid pipes. I'm also transferring tons of items because of my Geore setup, so let's go ahead and add some dense energy cells, that way our network can handle any weird power spikes. And just like before, we need to go over to our flux points, which are not correctly transferring power. We're also going to set up another vibranium furnace, as one furnace just doesn't quite do the trick. We'll also set up another interface, that way we can pull more items out. I'm also realizing now that my farm is way too small, so let's go ahead and expand that a couple times. That way it hopefully makes us enough dirt and logs, as we're going to need over 1 million of each. And with our farm expanded, it's now time to head over to the end. But before we do that, let's make a dimension card, that way we can access our system from anywhere. Now we can head over to the end, where we're going to place down a waystone so that way we can access it anytime. Now we're going to need some dragon's breath, so let's break some crystals while we wait for that, which luckily did not take too long. With our newfound dragon's breath, we can now make our max level goo. We're going to want to do some time crystal setup, so let's get some budding amethyst going. as well as get a bunch of blocks that we'll convert with the goo. We'll need to convert some iron, gold, diamonds, and netherite. Now you may have noticed earlier, when I went to make my netherite blocks, I didn't quite make netherite blocks, which confused me for a little bit until I backed up just a tiny bit. And yep, these are netherite furnaces. Not quite what I was looking for. But that's okay, we'll just craft up a couple netherite blocks. Now we're going to want to craft up 8 swappers, as we'll need 2 for the Chaos Dragon fight, and 6 for time crystal automation. We'll also need to craft up some advanced sensors, as well as a block breaker. We're also going to need to set up some extractors, that way we can start making some latex, which we're going to need soon for a couple machines. Now it's time to do our time crystal setup, where we're going to need 2 swappers and an advanced sensor, as well as the time crystals of course, which are made by converting some budding amethyst. Now we'll just make sure that the sensor is checking the correct stage of the time crystal, and activating our swapper when it needs to. We'll also need to repeat the same process in the nether, which became quite annoying with all these wither skeletons. So I decided to make a mega torch, and to cull the remaining population. Finally, we'll do the same setup in the end, and let's make sure it's all claimed, that way we don't have anything messing with it. Then we'll just set up our machines, and make sure that they're all set correctly. Just gotta change these settings, and what the frick? Does claiming chunks mean nothing to you, Ender Dragon? Now, I'm already low on netherite, this pissed me off. So I grabbed up the remaining swapper, and headed back to the overworld, where I decided to just pause the game, and decided that my day was ruined. So after taking a full day break from that, I finally decided to continue the run. Which I just want to take note of, look at the time in the top left. The game lags for a little bit, which is typical when loading in. But then I checked the time, and I've lost nearly a minute already. So that's a good way to bring me back. Anyways, I've decided I've had enough of this dragon. So let's get back into Industrial foregoing, that way we can start making our stasis chamber. Before we do that, we're going to need a mob slaughter factory. That way we can start generating some pink slime. We'll just make sure to give it some add-ons, that way it can reach our farm. And now that we have pink slime unlocked, we can start making some stasis chambers. So heading back into the end, it's time to trap these 1s and 0s that ruined my day. The easiest place to trap this dragon is going to be where it's going to be perching. Let's just be sure to add a speed add-on, that way the dragon doesn't accidentally break it. Now back into the overworld, we're going to need to convert some more netherite blocks. And would you look at that? At least I'm consistent. Now let's convert some actual netherite blocks. That way we can replace the swappers that got destroyed. Luckily it seems like we've trapped the dragon, so we won't have to worry about it breaking our stuff. We'll just set up the same system as normal, except here we'll add some extra growth accelerators, as well as an advanced block breaker. We'll then set the breaker to only break fully grown crystals. We'll then pick up those crystals in an ender chest, as that'll be the easiest way to transport items across dimensions. We'll just have to be sure to import all those items into our system. Now the time crystal block will spend some time in each dimension, until reaching the end where it'll grow some time crystals for us. And when it runs out of energy in the end dimension, it'll go ahead and repeat the process. Now we're going to set up a mob crusher for the ender dragon, as that'll be the fastest way to kill it. And now that the dragon is dead, we'll just need to turn off that stasis chamber. That way it can finish its death animation. Killing this dragon also gave us a dragon heart. Now we should have plenty of time crystals coming through, so let's go ahead and set up a time wand. We'll just need to make some time fluid and some water, in order to give it some fuel. Next up on the list is setting up the power mob. This one's pretty straightforward. All we need is a pattern provider on an energizer orb, as well as some energizer rods that will be used to power the energizer orb. Just make sure the pattern provider is set to only put one recipe at a time. Now we'll just want to make some higher tier energizer rods, that way we can quickly craft up all the higher tier materials. So while those are slowly being made, let's place down an RF Tools infuser, that way we can fully infuse a builder. We're then going to take that builder out into the end dimension, where we're going to have it mine a giant area for us. While the materials from this area are nice, what we're really here for is for it to clear out a giant area for us, which will expose all the unobtainium. And while that quarry is going, it's time to head out to the first Chaos Dragon. Once we reach about 10,000 blocks in any direction, we'll find ourselves at the Chaos Guardian Arena. Now what we want to do is set up a trap for the dragon before it spawns. We'll set up a stasis chamber a little bit below where it's going to spawn, that way we won't have to deal with it. And in order for the dragon to spawn, we just have to go a bit lower into the arena. Let's just give that stasis chamber a little tick boost, that way we're sure it gets trapped. Now we can head over to each crystal, where we're going to set up 2 different swappers to move these crystals. Normally you can't break these crystals until the dragon attacks them, but by moving them with some swappers, we trick the game into thinking they're broken. We'll just have to repeat this process for all 14 crystals. After removing the last crystal, the dragon will lose its immunity. Now what we're going to do is set up a crusher for the dragon, which will remove its bonus health shield, and give us time to set up a damaging trap below it. Let's use some reinforced redstone blocks, as normal redstone blocks would just get broken by the dragon. Then we'll put a mob masher on it, with some upgrades in order to damage the dragon faster. Now while we wait for the dragon to respawn, as well as take all of its health, let's get some patterns going. We're going to need to manually set up about 20 different patterns for our singularity, so while we wait for the dragon, this is a good time to start setting them up. Now that the dragon is dead, we just need to break our stasis chamber in order for it to have its death animation. Just be sure to get out of its way, as it still does some damage. Now we just need to head underneath the dragon in order to get the chaos shards. So let's just break this obsidian, and I quit. Let's just head back home for a second, that way we can make a cool wand from dire things. We're just going to need to convert a couple more gold blocks, and toss those in the furnace. Now let's go through our wands and start crafting them up, until we get to the Eclipse Gate wand. Alright, now that we have this, let's head back to the dragon. And my game crashed. But that's no worries, we'll just log back in, and we'll just continue from where we left off. Wait a minute, why am I up here in the air? And why does it say the Chaos Guardian is still alive? That's not good. Let's get a stasis chamber real quick, because it seems like the dragon's spawning. We'll just put that where it was, and we'll time wand it for when the dragon spawns. And there we go, crisis averted it seems. Let's just get back to making our patterns. Alright, looks like the Chaos Dragon is dead, so let's break that stasis chamber. Now we can mine the crystal. Don't touch me, don't touch me, don't touch me, don't touch me. Oh, thank you. Success! Now it's time to go to the next Chaos Dragon. In order for us to make all of the items for the star, we're going to need to kill about 8 Chaos Dragons. Which is quite a lot, but I have a plan to hopefully mitigate that. So now here we are at the next Chaos Dragon. So let's do the same setup, and start getting at those crystals. At this point I realized that I can just put the swappers right next to each other, and just change their settings around a little. Although it doesn't seem like a lot, this makes it a lot easier to set up, nearly cutting the time in half for each crystal. Like, look how quick this is. And at this point you should basically get what I'm doing, so let's get this next dragon complete. Just be very careful, as this thing hurts. But no worries, that's why we have the /back command. Okay. Well, that's unideal. Now I'm gonna have to wait 30 seconds before I can /back again. Not the worst time loss. Let's just grab our grave and get back to it. Where's my grave? It's up there, isn't it? No worries, we'll just make another jetpack. And then slowly climb our way back up to our grave. There we go, now that we got our stuff back, we can pick up where we left off. Wait a minute, something seems off here. Yeah. Well, that's not good. Well, that man's charging up a laser beam, which I have no intention of seeing how many frames of I can survive. So that sucks. Looks like we gotta go to another Chaos Dragon. And now that's 2 of 2 Chaos Dragons that are really making me reconsider my life choices. So now back to spending 5 minutes going to the dragon, plus another 5 minutes in the pause screen, while we wait for the world to load. Yay. Anyways, here at the next dragon, it's time to rinse and repeat. And if at this point you don't get it, then you're too far gone. I can't help you. Anyways, this is going to be our last dragon before we go ahead and head back home. Now that we have our chaos shards, it's time to set up some draconic evolution crafting. This crafting is quite annoying, as we can't quite fully automate it with AE2, but I do have some improvements from the last time. First up, we're going to use this redstone clock. That way I no longer have to manually click the craft button. Now we'll be sure all of these are connected to power. Then we'll finish setting up the AE2 crafting. Let's set this foundry provider to only do one recipe at a time, and with this setting it won't do the next craft until it gets the previous one. We're going to start using our time wand a lot, so let's go ahead and start filling up a bunch of time fluid. Then we're going to connect this tank up to our ME system, which will allow us to fill up our time wand wherever we are. Now it's time to start some crafting. We're going to need to slowly upgrade our injectors until we get to the chaotic tier. I also just remembered that I need to get into bees, so while those injectors are crafting, let's start doing a couple quests to get some honeycombs. We're then going to set up a bee nest, along with a feeding slab, as well as a couple other machines we're going to use for bee creation. We'll need to extend a piston into a bottler, which will allow us to squash some bees for some bee material. Now we're also going to need to start duplicating some dragon eggs, as well as start making some dragon breath. Unfortunately, honey seeds were not added until a later version, so we're just going to have to use some regular bees for some honeycombs. Heading back into the end dimension, we're going to need quite a few draconic bees, so we'll just use some dragon's breath on an obsidian nest. We're then going to squish those bees down in order to get their genetics. Maybe that sounds a little sus. Anyways, we need to put that bee material into a centrifuge, where it's going to slowly break down its parts. Here we're looking for the draconic type gene. We can then use those genes to make a spawn egg. But before we do that, we're going to need quite a few honeycombs, so we're just waiting on the regular bees until we get enough to make a simulator upgrade. And now that we have a simulator upgrade, we can use our time wand on the bee nest, and it'll give us tons of combs. Now we can combine those genes with some honey treats, and then combine them with some eggs, in order to get those spawn eggs. Just note that it might fail if you don't get the genetics to 100%. And now it's time to upgrade those injectors to the final tier. Let's place a dragon egg inside the feeding slab. That way we can start producing some draconic combs. With those draconic combs, we can start making some bee upgrades. We're also going to need a heated centrifuge, as our bees are going to start producing blocks. Now we're going to take those spawn eggs, and slowly upgrade those into the draconic evolution ones. We're going to want both a chaotic bee, as well as an awakened draconian bee. Now we're going to head back to the end real quick, as we're going to need to kill the ender dragon a few more times. So let's summon it back in, where it will be trapped with our stasis chamber at the top. Here we can just directly kill it with the crusher, as the end crystals are not enough to save it. Here we're looking for some draconic scales, as we're going to need 18 of them for the star. So let's just kill one more, as each one drops about 8. It's also at this point that I'm pretty low on awakened draconium. My initial plans were to make 2 chaotic bees, so it's at this point that I start upgrading some mystical agriculture essences, that way I can make some awakened draconium seeds. We're also going to need an awakened draconium crux. But for now, let's make the Master Infusion Crystal, and let's set up automatic upgrading of our essences. Now that that's going, let's start crafting up the components we need to make our chaotic bees. For now, we're just going to have one, which will spawn in and grab with the cage. It definitely seems like you used to be able to just put the spawn egg inside the beehive, but that doesn't work for some reason. Here's also where I make my next big mistake. I decide not to upgrade my bees. My chaotic bee currently has normal production rate, which is a lot slower than the max production rate of high, which I could easily get with all the genes that I have already. Instead, let's make another mistake and make some awakened draconium seeds. We'll just need to make sure they're planted below a crux. Now we're going to set up some crafters for all our essences, which is slowly being crafted over time. Checking up on our antimatter, it looks like we've already made 20. That means we just need 16 more to go. I've also now crafted up 54 batteries, which I'll slowly charge inside my inventory. Now we decide to go and make my next chaotic bee, which means we need a few chaotic cores. We're now quite behind on some awakened draconium, so let's make those seeds a total waste of time, and let's add that awakened bee into our beehive. You'll note that this one's at medium productivity, which is one higher than normal. And checking in on our centrifuge, we have quite a few awakened draconium going now. Next up on the list is going to be a primitive alloy smelter. This was actually removed in the later versions, which is a little bit funny, because with the time one, this one's actually better than the powered one. Anyways, let's queue up a bunch of vibranium, as we're going to need about 2,000 of it. We are also going to need some draconic seeds, as we're going to need 18 dragon skulls, and I am not searching through that many end cities. We'll also head over to our wither area, where we're going to set up our wither milking. We're going to go ahead and give the stasis chamber some power, and then we'll build up our wither. Now we just need a fluid laser base, as well as a couple laser drills. We'll give the laser drills some upgrades, and then we'll summon in our wither. Now with our laser lens, we're going to start making some ether gas. Let's just give this flux point priority. That way if we run out of power somewhere, it'll prioritize doing this one first. Now let's just put that into a tank, and connect it up to our system. Next up on the list, we're going to make a reprocessor. That way we can start making some plutonium. We won't need a lot of it. A stack of plutonium would be plenty enough. And once this thing's fully built, we'll just need to put some cyanide into it, and let it work its magic. We're going to need some demon dream fruit soon, so let's add one of those to our farm. And then let's head over to this area to start occultism. We'll just use this fire to craft up a bunch of different items. For now, we'll toss some saplings into it, which will allow us to get some other wood. We'll just need to eat some of the fruit before we go and harvest the trees. Now we'll craft up a bunch of various chalks and use them to make some rituals. The first one's pretty easy to memorize. It's just a big circle of white chalk. And don't forget the candles, as well as a couple bowls on the side. We'll toss our recipe into the bowls in order to complete our ritual. This one created a basic crusher, which will give the crusher some end stone, allowing us to make another color of chalk. We'll also need to sift through some deep slate and a lower tier mesh in order to get some calcite, which we're going to give to our crusher. Now we can make some light gray and purple chalk, set up the next ritual area, which is just going to take some white and purple, and then we'll use this altar to make some glowing emerald dust looking thing. Now we can use that to make some lime chalk, and then we can finally make our final ritual. We're going to need to do each of these rituals 18 times, so let's set up a little bit of automation. Now we can go ahead and make 18 fragile soul gems. I then decide to use some chutes for this next automation, as cables would get kinda messy. We'll just place some chests above the chutes, and then we'll place items into each chest. Now we're going to need to place down our final ritual, which do note that this takes some regular skeleton skulls. Luckily I have many from my beheading upgrade. Now all we have to do is make 18 soul gems. With those soul gems complete, let's have our crusher start crushing up some plutonium. Let's also put an item collector nearby, that way the drops don't despawn. Now let's upgrade our pickaxe a little more, by adding Fortune 5 and Efficiency 5. Now if we head back to our quarry that we set up earlier, we'll see that there's plenty of unobtainium around. Unfortunately, plenty is not quite enough, so let's move our quarry to a new area. Next up on our list, we're going to get into ore attack. So let's make a fluid add-on for our centrifuge, allowing us to make some new recipes. Then we need to make an atomic forge, which we'll power with an enderic laser. And you would think I would learn from the last time that I should not put the enderic laser next to the pattern provider, but I did not learn. Oh well, you'll figure it out soon enough. Now we actually have all our machines that we need, so we just gotta go ahead and queue up all the recipes we want. Now let's use our JEI to kind of organize what we have left to do. Next up on the list, we're going to need tons of slimes, as we're going to need lots of slime pearls in order to make some witherless roses. I've also noticed that I'm quite far behind on most of my farming, so let's set up a sewer block in order to get some fertilizer. This will make us some sewage, which we'll use into a sewage composter to make some fertilizer. We don't need too much fertilizer, as we're just making a hydroponic bed. A cool thing we can do is pipe both ether and water from one pipe. Now we'll just give it a simulation processor, that way we can start simulating some plant growth. We're going to end up simulating 3 different seeds. First we'll do some inferium seeds, then we'll do some wood seeds, and finally we'll make some dirt seeds. Now we'll just have to place those in some simulated hydroponic beds, which we'll be able to time one to make a ton of resources. We just need to put the simulation card, as well as the seeds, into each hydroponic bed. And we're also going to put some add-ons to make them a little more efficient. Heading back over to Oratech, I finally find my problem. So let's go ahead and move this bad boy. Now we're going to need to go through a ton of coal, as we're going to need 18 Eclipse Ember blocks. So let's just do this fun little setup in order to go through these blocks as fast as possible. We'll just have to repeat the process with each upgraded block we get. I kind of just eyeballed how much coal I would need, which I ended up being kind of close, so let's just get the rest of that going. And now it's time to move on. We're going to need 18 of these chaotic capacitors, and then let's set up our singularity crafting. It's already quite slow to make enough for 1 star, so let's go ahead and make 8 different compressors, speeding up our process 8-fold. Then in each pattern provider we'll put about 3 different singularity crafts. And over to the side we'll set up our crafting for all of our compressed blocks. And since we have unobtainium now, let's go ahead and upgrade our furnaces one last time. Since we're going to need to make a ton of singularities, the best way we can do that is with some ME requesters. These requesters will automatically craft whatever we put into them. Unfortunately, they don't seem to accept the JEI items, so we'll have to craft up 1 of each singularity in order to set this thing. Now we'll add each singularity into the requester, and we'll tell it to make about 18 of each. By doing it this way, we can hopefully not clog our machines up with a bunch of crafts. It'll also craft 1 at a time, that way we'll only have to craft up however many we're missing, rather than waiting for all the materials to make 18 at a time. Heading back to the SPS machine, we're now at 35 antimatter, so we're basically all set on that. Here's one of my biggest wonders. I only just now crafted this quantum computer. This thing's really great at making tons of recipes, and I definitely should have made it much earlier. But back to the grind, let's set up some dragon breath cooking, and convert some leather into phantom membranes. And now we can craft up 18 data room blocks. Let's also use that ether gas to make 18 weather builders. And now I'd like to just add whatever this is. Like, how did this man get out? This man was given priority power. How did it run out? It's whatever. Our vibranium pickaxe is more than enough to take him out. We should now have enough to make 18 more dragon heads. And now we have to blow up 36 different singularities. Luckily in newer versions we can use craftable singularities. But for now I'm stuck in this corner slowly blowing up singularities 1 at a time. Let's take that gas spawning we had from before in order to spawn some ghasts. Now we just need to fill up 18 syringes with some gas juice. How lovely. Then when it's finished, we'll turn it back into witches, because we're going to need over 10 million redstone. We gotta do some actual additions crafting, which is a little bit annoying, but luckily only takes about 5 minutes. We'll just have to set up some display stands around an empowerer. Then we'll feed each of them with some chutes, and power them all up. Once we have enough empowered diamonds, we can craft up 18 interfaces. We'll also need to empower 18 canola seeds. Now going back to our requester, let's double all the singularities that we'll need 2 of for each star. Now what we want to do is set up our pattern for crafting our compressed blocks. This is another mistake I made, as for whatever reason, I just decided to round the number of items I need, which takes the same amount of effort as just putting in the actual number I need. It doesn't matter too much, but it does end up making a mess inside the chests of random blocks that are compressed. But anyways, if you don't know what I'm doing here, I'm simply just adding the number of items that I need into a recipe pattern, with the output being just some random item that I don't actually craft. Then I'll just craft that item, and it'll make all our compressed blocks. Just be sure to cancel the craft afterwards, otherwise your system's going to be waiting for an item that it's never going to get. Now let's go ahead and see if we can craft all the items, and since one is working, let's see if we have enough for 18. And it looks like it does, so let's go ahead and hit start on there. Any second now. Uh-oh, the game is not too happy. Which, to be fair, it's putting 30 million items into a single chest, which that chest is then compressing. So yeah, there's a little bit of ping happening. Luckily, after just a few moments, we can check our chests and see that we've compressed all our blocks. We'll then need to make an infinite cobble cell, that way we can start stacking up some 7x cobblestone. In order to do that, we'll set up an MEIO port, and have it start outputting its items into the compression chest. We'll make sure this little network has some energy cells, that way it can send as many items as possible. And having a look in the chest, we are making quite a bit of cobblestone. So while it's going, let's move on to the next mod. We're going to need to kill 18 Wilden bosses, which we can summon with a ritual brazier. And you might be able to tell, but I did not test this little setup beforehand. Oh well, I guess we'll just have to expand the area. I also put down a little fan that'll push them into the spikes, but I seem to never learn my lesson. Just get in the spikes. We're gonna need to summon 18 of these, so let's summon a few more than one at a time. And these guys are quite annoying, as they do a large AoE knockback. So let's go ahead and summon in the next batch. And then break the braziers as soon as they're summoned in. Starting to get a little bit more of a hang of it, let's summon the last 8 all at once. With all those bosses down, we'll just need to set up some chutes to automatically craft the 18 summoning focuses. Now back at our quarry, let's grab up that last little bit of unobtainium that we need. Now we'll use an ore hammer to double it, and we'll toss them all into the furnace. Next up on the list is capturing 18 different zombies, as well as capturing 36 witches. Now we can make some Ender IO machines, such as the Slice and Splice to make a Z-Logic controller, which we'll then use to make a soul binder. Let's just make sure it's set to allow items in and out of the bottom face. Now autocrafting these sentient enders does not go so well, so we're going to shove all these witch souls inside of a chest, which will automatically pipe into the soul binder. Now we can tell our system how to make some sentient enders, which we're going to need 36 of. After a few minutes on the XP drain, we finally have all of them crafted. And let's go ahead and grab all those focuses of summoning. Those are the last items we need to make our 18 dragon souls. Next, we'll craft up as many weather compasses as we can, and turn all those gas syringes into some flight modules. We'll need to craft up 16 more unobtainium furnaces, And then checking on our cobblestone, we see that we have plenty enough. We'll just need to crush down some of it. Back over to our compression chest, we'll add our compressed obsidian to the crafting recipe. Which, as it turns out, we're missing about 600,000. And that's not good to see. So let's go ahead and set up a little obsidian farm. This won't work in the later versions, as it's only going to make one obsidian at a time. But in my next video, you'll see an even easier way to make some obsidian. But here in the older version, we can see that we're making plenty of obsidian with this method. Next up, we're going to need to make 36 paradox machines. So let's go ahead and get those crafted, allowing us to make our 18 oblivion shards. Next on the list, we're going to need to do some create shenanigans. And in order to power all this, we're going to need 2 large water wheels. Then we got to do some weird create stuff in order to make these gears rotate faster, which will connect all these up to our conveyor belts and some deployers. At the end of our conveyor belt setup, we'll place a chute with a chest, as well as a pipe upgrade that's going to pull out everything but the finished product. Then it'll put it right back to the beginning of the conveyor belt. Now all we have to do is give it some items and then toss some golden plates onto the conveyor belts. Now this little system's going to slowly make some precision matrices for us. Precision matrix. That's a hard word to say. Try saying that 10 times fast. Precision matrix, no. Anyways, we're going to need 18 of these. So as this slowly makes them for us, we'll slowly convert them into some mechanical arms. And those are all set. So let's move back to our weather compasses, where we'll make the last remaining ones. Then we'll head back to our compression chest, where we're going to queue up all the dirt we're going to need. As well as all the logs that we're going to need. We did the same thing with obsidian already, so we are all set to make our 18 black holes. Next up on the list is 18 flight modules, which these will struggle to craft if you have any tanks inside your ME system, which of course I didn't realize until later. Anyways, now we're back in the end because we need some more dragons. Turns out our bees were not good enough. And even if my one chaotic bee was on max priority, I still don't think it would be enough. Because that thing needs to make 13,000 little shards. And with it being like a 10% chance per comb, it probably is not fast enough. Maybe if you had a couple of them, it'd be fine. But it would only save like 2 or 3 dragon kills, which each dragon kill only takes like 5 minutes. So the time to make the bee versus killing the dragons, it's up for debate. But anyways, we're gonna have to move on to our last dragon here, which is quite repetitive to kill, and I would not mind a buff to the bees. Anyways, let's give the bees one last love tap, as my chaotic bee is going to save me from killing 1 dragon. So maybe it was worth it. So let's go ahead and get all our shards going, and I miscalculated. Say hello to the next chaos dragon. This is fun. Anyways, that's officially the last one, so now we just have a few more things to craft up. Checking on our singularities, we're going to need to add a couple more lapis ores. So let's go ahead and place those in the efficient mining spots. And while we wait for that, we can make our 18 reactor cores. We can now make 16 of the 18 philosopher fuels, as we'll wait on the last 2 for the last minute, since 2 of our unobtainium furnaces are currently in use. Checking up on the singularities, it seems like the Invar one is far behind. So let's go ahead and manually craft up 12 of those. And checking up on the crafting speed, it's not very fast. Now, the reason for this is because I have like no co-processors, but of course me back then didn't realize that. So instead I decided to make this elaborate way of crafting up this stuff super fast using an autocrafter. We'll just tell it how to make Invar dust, and then we'll need to actually power it with an energy transmitter, as the pipes are not fast enough. Well, the pipes are technically fast enough, the machine can only take so much on each face, and the wireless transmitter kind of bypasses that, especially when it's time wanted. So giving it a look now, we can see we're making Invar dust at quite a fast speed. Now let's go ahead and make our Nexium emitters, putting us one step closer to the Starry bee. Now let's go ahead and see what we're missing for our star. Looks like we're still missing a bit of lapis and emeralds. So while those are going, let's craft up our ultimate singularities, which we can make 17 of, and we're just waiting on the last Invar singularity to make the 18th. So when that's done, let's go ahead and craft up the last singularity, and toss it into an interface to tell our crafter that it's finished. Now checking up on the star, it looks like we're just missing those emeralds and lapis. So back to the Geore farm, let's start replacing even more geores. Let's not forget to add our emerald geores as well. And after a quick minute, we now have enough resources to make the last few singularities. Now let's grab up our furnaces, and use those to craft up the last 2 philosopher fuels. Now we can tell our system to make 18 stars. Now we're not quite finished with the speedrun, as we have our 18 stars, but we're going to need our Starry bee. So let's craft those stars up into some star blocks, as we'll need 1 for the bee, and 1 for the bee to pollinate with. Now to get the Starry bee, we're going to need to give 1 block to a Patrick bee, and the only way to get the Patrick bee in this version is to fish it up in a warm ocean biome. If you're playing on any of the newer versions, then you can fish in any biome for it. Here I'm just setting up a nice big pool of water, which we'll fill up with our builder. Now we just need to fission it after converting it using an Ars ritual down below. Now we just sit and wait until we get the Patrick bee. This is definitely something we probably could have weaved in between one project, but saving a nice fishing adventure for last just feels right. After all the planning and all the min-maxing, just sitting here fishing in my boat feels like a nice break. Now we just gotta sit in here and wait for our Patrick bee. Any other bees that we pull up are gonna get pissed at us, so let's just be sure to get rid of those as quickly as possible. There he is! Alright, careful now. We just need to feed this guy one of our star blocks, then throw him into our beehive to start making infinite stars. And that, my friends, is the Starry Bee speedrun done in 17 hours and 19 minutes. Thank you guys for all the support on all my videos. And remember, the first person to find my secret hidden message will get a free sub on my Discord channel, getting access to all of my speedrun guides. That's all I have for you guys in this video, and be sure to keep an eye out for my next video, where I speedrun the star with a huge handicap. So I'll see you all then.